And Mitch figured it out. Thank you, Mitch. So hello. Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad you're here. This is Caring for Ourselves as We Care for Others. And this is the last in a series of 6 that we kicked off in May for Mental Health Awareness Month. And today we're really going to focus on reviewing some of the major highlights of the series. If you are interested in more of this kind of content, I'd love to hear from you. I am meeting next week with the Duluth Hub to talk with them, the Mountain Midwest Hub, that is, who's our generous sponsor for this series, to see if that's something that we want to do more of. So if this is something that you're interested in, would love to hear your feedback. We'll have a quick 3-minute survey for you at the end where you can share if you're interested in hearing more. But thank you for being here today. I'm so glad to see you. As I said, this is our final in the 6-part series of Caring for Ourselves as We Care for Others, really putting it all together with the 6 different topics that we had. Again, I want to thank the Mountain Midwest Hub, Sarah Cole for helping spark this, Ellie for really helping with our technology, and today Mitch for jumping in and helping troubleshoot as we are putting this together. So for those of you who do not know me, I'm Sarah Johnson, and I am the Joy Labs. One of the Joy Labs, well, that's the business that I started almost a year ago now, after leaving for many, many years a local Y that I was really sad to leave. After many years of being a community partner with that same local Y. But about a year ago, it became the time for me to embark on my own thing, bringing all of my different pieces, my self as an artist, community engaged artist in particular, and somebody who's a licensed professional counselor and who's really passionate about public health. Joy Labs is allowing me to experiment and play with folks in finding what brings them joy. So I'm getting to work with folks on a really local level and kind of on an individual level, as well as up on the bigger macro level, continuing my work with YUSA and other organizations across the country. So this has been a really incredible year, and this is a really fun thing to be able to do our final in this series, kind of at the year mark for me. So thank you for being here in this time. My intention, as always, is allowing us a little bit of time and space to just pause and learn together as a community, as a form of care for ourselves. And then in particular, this session is that review and putting it all together. I always like to make sure you know, I did not just trick you into group therapy. We are in a group, and it is therapeutic to connect with other people. And I hope that you give yourself an opportunity to turn your phone off, turn the email off, or put the screen to the side for a moment so you truly can engage and interact here. Or if you just need to stare into space, that's totally fine too. But being together, being connected, that's one of the best things for our mental health. And so while this is not group therapy, I hope that you do find it as medicine or therapeutic. So our time together today, really, we're just going to take a brief moment to, what I like to say, arrive. Then I've got highlights of the series. So I'm just going to go through each of the 5 webinars that we've done and pull out specifically strategies that you can take with you and use. At the end of the session, we'll actually post the slide deck in the chat. We'll also post a recording of this and the slide deck on link on the original May's Mental Health Awareness post, Mental Health Awareness Every Day. Then finally, hopefully we'll take a few minutes at the end to think about what you're going to take with you, what you want to focus on, because there's a lot of content here. It's helpful to focus on just 1 or 2 things at a time. So, arriving. So you're all here in the virtual environment. I can see your names, right? I can tell that you're here in that sense, but I want to give you an opportunity to actually emotionally, maybe spiritually, maybe attentionally arrive. So everything I offer you is an invitation, which means that at any point you can decline that invitation. This particular invitation is taking an opportunity to breathe and settle in. I like to think about when I want to arrive, when I want to allow my whole container and all of its contents, including my brain, to be able to show up and be attentive. I like to pull down and kind of ground myself. So I'm actually pushing my feet in the floor. So if that's available to you, that might be a helpful practice. And then just bringing attention sometimes up from the feet all the way up to the top of the head at whatever pace feels right for you. Pausing on any spots that you notice tension particularly, or maybe a sensation that you enjoy. Maybe just noticing that you have hands, just allowing yourself to really settle into your own body or container, as I like to call it. Maybe settling into a breath, taking a deep breath in and out. Noticing what happens as you do that. I'm going to invite you for another one in and out. Again, noticing. Maybe one more in and out. I invite you now again to just notice what you notice. And invite you in this moment to give yourself an opportunity for a little bit of self-gratitude, a little bit of recognition that you bothered to show up today for this half-an-hour webinar. And that in and of itself is an act of self-care. So I'm going to invite you to give yourself some sort of gesture or posture that is you giving yourself props, thanks, gratitude for showing up. So that may be that you wish to place a hand or maybe both hands on your heart. Perhaps you want to maybe give yourself a little pat on the shoulder, or even like, kind of wipe off some of the stress. Perhaps you want to do a little bit of a hair flip. One of my favorites is to actually give myself a little squeeze, a little thank you, a little hug. So whatever feels right to you for a sense of gratitude for showing up for yourself in this moment. I'll invite you to begin transitioning your attention here. We're going to begin with our content. So maybe you want to do a little bit of a stretch by way of transition. Ooh, that feels good. I'm popping in my back. Maybe you want to take another deep breath in and out. Maybe you want to just slowly open your eyes, move your attention around your space. Whatever it is that helps you arrive here. I'll invite you to bring your attention back here now when you're ready. So welcome. For those of you who were keeping your eyes open, you might have noticed that we had a visitor during that mindful meditation. That was Frankie, one of my now 3 cats. Yes, 3. Another one just showed up out of the forest. I'm guessing he might visit as well. So, and he's a little pointier. So glad he didn't show up during the meditation, because sometimes it makes me shriek a little bit. So glad you are here. As I said, I would love to hear in the chat what you noticed. So if you would be willing to say, hey, where you're tuning in from and something that you noticed during that arrival, I would love that. I asked you to notice several times. There's no right or wrong. What you noticed is what you noticed. The practice of noticing is the practice of mindfulness. So for those of you who'd be willing, I'd love to see what you noticed in the chat and where you're tuning in from. So I'm going to start moving us into review. I have probably more slides for us than we have time for. We do go till 2:30 Central, so about 20 minutes to review some of the things that we talked about over the last 6 months. The first being in our kickoff, we talked about what community care is. And this is something that there's going to be more and more information for you on. I have some resources at the end of this to share with you if you're interested in hearing more. But essentially, what we talked about is community care is being effective at taking care of ourselves and each other. And it's not just me knowing that, it's everybody knowing that. I want to know that everybody in my community knows how to take care of themselves and knows how to show up for their friends and family as well. And when what we are experiencing as humans is beyond what we can just take care of as community members, I want to make sure that everyone knows how to actually connect up to other supports. Thanks for your comment there. Yeah, it is hard to give ourselves props. Thank you for sharing that. I find that too. Good noticing. So when we talk about community care, we're saying everybody has a role and that there are a basic set of knowledge, skills, and behaviors that we can learn. And those knowledge, skills, and behaviors are what it means to do community care. So things like defining mental health is how we think, feel, and act. So knowing that that's something we all have and that there's things we can do to better or worsen our mental health. Knowing how to really connect with people authentically and actually talk about mental health and normalize those conversations, really focusing on like, how are you really? And coping skills, what we can do to take care of ourselves and each other. Having knowledge about trauma-informed practices, knowing that trauma is really common and that means that we need to think about how we might show up for others. How that trauma might show up in others' behaviors and how they feel and how they see the world and what that means for developing those really healthy relationships, ways that we can support healing and recovery. Part of community care is understanding that there are multiple things that impact our health, not just how I decide to take care of myself, but the neighborhoods that I grow up in, the ways I'm treated by society. Am I treated well or am I marginalized based on my identity? Other things like access to healthy food, access to healthcare, right? All of those things, the adversities that we experience as children, all of those are also things that go into how each of us, our individual health might come out. We also want to know that everybody knows how to recognize when things are not going well, either for yourself or someone else, and what to do about it. We want to connect people to what I call formal supports when our informal care is not enough, or that we need more than just the informal care. We also want to know that everybody knows what to do in case of crisis, because nobody plans a crisis, right? We all might suddenly be in the middle of a crisis, either ourselves or someone else's. We want to know that people know what to do. Deep part of community care is that collaboration piece. So how do we collaborate as informal supports with formal supports? How do we collaborate with other informal supports? How do we collaborate with someone who might be struggling, right? They are the expert on themselves. How do we show up and support them in getting the help that they need? So there are several different knowledge, skills, and behaviors, some of which are embedded into this series, some of which you'll be able to learn more about through some of the additional resources we have for you. So what are we talking about when we're talking about self-care? We're talking about all of the everyday things that we can do to essentially stay alive. So we're not talking like the spa and drinking wine, right? That's kind of Instagram or TikTok's version of self-care. What we're talking about is the basics. So how am I treating my body? How am I treating my soul and my mind, which is contained in my body? How am I connecting with others into a sense of purpose, right? So all of those different pieces that help me build a baseline and a foundation of good mental health. The more of those things we do, the more consistently we do those things, the better. the healthier you will be. Now, I want you to notice that there is one on here, ask for help. This one, the last one that is listed, that I consider one of the most important self-care skills. So if you don't know how to do something, but you know how to ask for help, you're going to be fine. So if you're asking for help on things that are beyond your scope, beyond your knowledge, beyond your energy or time, then you are going to be in good shape. So note that. Our next session was on balance. How do we balance all of these things and all of the different roles that we have, right? We're Y leaders, we're friends, we're family, we're neighbors, we're fellow congregants or fellow spiritual followers. We have all of these different things, all of the different roles that we're trying to balance. And so we talked about some really basic strategies for finding balance. One of the pieces that I love is the setting the tone for your day. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but really, how do we weave in practices throughout our day, self-care practices, centering practices that help us find our balance and sustain our balance. Starting with the first breath in the day can be a really helpful thing. So I like to say in the morning, as much as possible, I will not use an alarm clock. And it's worked for me very, very well. I don't think I've used an alarm clock in 2 years because I've gotten into a really good rhythm. One of the first things I do when I wake up, open my eyes, do a little bit of stretch, but I'll take a couple of intentional breaths and kind of even just abstractly think about what's my word for the day, or what's my stance for my day? What's my intention for the day? Focusing on what we control, keeping in mind who and what's most important to us, practicing, all of those things, asking for help when you need it. All of those are excellent strategies for finding balance. When you get the slide deck, in the speaker notes, there are embedded links. This is one of them. This is a daily reflection worksheet that can be a really helpful thing for setting the tone of your day. So this is the AM section. There is also PM section that we'll come to later. But the AM section gives you an opportunity to just really think about what's most important to me today. What are my strategies today? What might I need based on how charged my battery is, right? If I'm coming into a day at a 2 versus coming into a day at an 8, my day may look really different. My priorities might be very different. So it's allowing us to take that moment of mindfulness to allow what we notice to be informative about what we need. Okay. Also helpful, as I had already mentioned, in seeking balance is making sure to ask for help when we need it. That is also a form of a healthy boundary, because if I can acknowledge I don't have the skills or the time or the energy to do this thing, and I'm asking someone else to help me with it, that's me setting a boundary saying, I'm not immortal. I can't do beyond what my energy or time allows for, or even my skill set, right? I need to ask for help in those situations. That's a really healthy thing to do. As I'm going through these, there's 3 more sessions that we talked about. I want you to begin noticing if there's things that you notice that are themes. I'm guessing you may already be noticing a major theme. I'm just going to let that sit for the moment. You can chime in the chat if you'd like, but I'm just asking you to notice if there's any themes. Our 3rd session was on burnout, and we talked a lot about strategies for reducing that risk of burnout. And important to know that burnout is not something that is a personal failure or weakness. That's a really important piece to burnout. Burnout happens with kind of two things. So a primary cause of burnout are systems that are not sustainable or equitable, systems that are not supportive. All of those kinds of things can lead to burnout, especially in the recipe that's killer is if we're also not taking care of ourselves adequately. So important to know that self-care alone is not going to prevent burnout if we are working in a system that is inequitable. And if we think about our globe, we know that we're working in systems that are not always supportive and equitable, right? So we want to think about there's many, many different layers of inequities. And if on top of all of these other systemic inequities that a person might be experiencing because of their identity that's marginalized, and they're working in a place that's not supportive, they have a boss who's micromanaging or not trusting them, or doing all kinds of microaggressions or flat out aggressions, that is definitely a recipe for burnout. So one of the primary ways for reducing the risk of burnout is working in a healthy workplace. So when we think about community care and how that fits with the why, it is a way to protect our employees and our teams. It is a way to also create sustainable workplaces. It's also a way to address equity. So there's a lot of different ways that these things fit together. Additionally, as an individual, ways that we can reduce the risk of burnout are all of these other different little pieces, little tiny shifts, like noticing what your posture is doing, or what your breathing is during the course of your day. So instead of like walking around with your shoulders up around your earlobes, which I do sometimes when I'm not paying attention, it's just noticing, taking those deep breaths to help lower and take some of that stress out. Focusing on what's meaningful and what brought you to work is a really helpful strategy. Giving ourselves grace, having that growth mindset of like, maybe I'm not good at this yet, rather than I'm just not good at this or I'm a failure, right? Having those healthy boundaries. Having a life outside of work is a really helpful thing. Asking for support and help and accepting that help and support when you need it. And imagining a life outside of work. So a life or a plan B. Focusing on small shifts can be very, very helpful when we're talking about reducing the risk of burnout. So moving on, you may be noticing some themes again. We're going to talk a little bit about building resilience. You're going to get this entire slide deck. I know I'm going through some of these pretty quickly. When we talk about resilience, we're talking about intentional activities and looking at those activities in terms of how do we connect with ourselves, so our heritage, our culture, our interests, our strengths, what we love to do, the things that really juice us up. How do we connect to community? So again, that might be culture and heritage, but it also might be just who are my people that I spend time with? What are the kinds of things that we do? How do we get to know each other? How do we support each other? And intentional connection to coping skills. So again, those self-care practices. What do I do when life gets difficult? How do I respond to that? How do I cope with that? How do I ask for help when I need it? If we are in times of overwhelm, which many of us are still living in times that are at least at times a bit overwhelming, if not sometimes all out overwhelming. Again, we want to focus on those small attainable shifts. We want to really try to put our focus and attention on the actions that help us feel grounded, even if we do those actions and it doesn't fix it. The more we can focus on strategies that we know have a greater likelihood of working and helping and moving towards better sense of balance, better sense of calm and resilience, the better. Because if we just do nothing, we risk things getting worse. So figuring out where are the little places where we can maybe have even 3% more ease, meaning like, can I allow myself to sit back in my chair? Just that one gesture gives me maybe 5% more ease than when I'm trying to sit up like this or leaning forward, right? Finally, who would love to support me? Who would love to support me? You are loved by probably many, many people in your life, which means that many, many people in your life would love to support you, would love to help you. Sometimes when we see our friends struggle, we struggle because we don't know what to do. But then we give them a hug, or we bake them a baked good, or we do some small gesture that we see makes them feel better, and it makes us feel better. Same is true for our friends. How can we give our friends kindness by allowing them to support us and help us? Another way to take a look at building resilience and fighting burnout is the daily reflection, looking at the PM reflection. And that is looking at what impacted me during this day. How is it impacting me? What do I need to make it okay? Who can I lean on for support? That can be a really helpful reflection, as well as bringing in again what's meaningful about what I'm doing. Another skill there. I'm wondering if you're noticing the theme. I'm thinking these are bright people on this call that you probably are getting the theme. We talked last month about hope as our ability to see possibilities even when things are difficult. Again, you may be seeing a theme as you even hear that, right? There's all kinds of strategies that we can do, actions we can take to help cultivate hope, even when we're not feeling it. And in fact, sometimes the most important thing is the action in order to help build the feeling and the experience of hope. If you are having trouble, you're doing actions to nurture your hope and you're still having trouble feeling it, that might be a really important time to ask for some help. That might be a friend, someone you love, or it might be something like going to the EAP, Employee Assistance Program, seeking out counseling, seeking out some kind of additional support, because hope is a really important thing in this world, especially when things are tough, as they have been. There's some questions that you can ask yourself to help develop that sense of help and hope as well. And I'm mindful of the time. We're at 2:30, so I want to make sure that we get to, wonder if you're noticing that theme. Here are some numbers that you can call or text any time of the day or night. And your takeaways, I'm wondering if you would be willing to put in the chat what stood out to you. Thank you, Debbie. What stood out to you as we reviewed the series? Were there any themes or resources that really stood out to you as something that you wanted to take away? And we're going to throw all of the resources for you here in the chat. I'm going to do that, Mitch. I'm not sure if you're still there. I have for you my email, as well as the daily reflection worksheet, the slide deck in whole, the mental health page on link, which is this, where you can find all of these recorded over here on the right. You also can find Go Kits, which are helpful resources in learning more about all of these different skills, as well as special announcements that are going on. You may also be interested in the Cosmetic podcast that the incredible Keziah Robertson and I were on this month talking about our care. And Mitch, I see your hand up there.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not letting me copy and paste the links, so
Okay.
Can Adam. Sorry about that.
No problem. I threw them in there. I was not sure if it would work or not. I know we're right up against the end of the time, so I want to honor your time. We're going to stop recording. I want to thank everybody at home who watched this. And then